a strategic reservoir of groundwater, the green lungs of the planet, or impenetrable wetlands have long terrified people due to their guile. The wetlands on the greater part of the Prypyat-Stokhid National Park are on the most extreme northeastern point of Volyn. Nature reigns on these lands that are saved from civilization. A dense web of numerous water flows encircles swamps, forests, sand dunes, and the spectacular lakes of the unique land of Volyn. The Prypyat and its tributary, Stokhid, floodplains form the territory of the Prypyat-Stokhid National Park. The feature of local Polysia is the predominant wetlands and river backwaters that are home to 200 species of birds and indigenous forests. The northeastern part of the Volyn Oblast is the catchment of the whole region because all waters flowing northward fall into the Prypyat River and the rivers Turya, Ster, Horyn and Stokhid.
Тобто, фактично всі води, які направляються на північ, вони всі попадають в річку Прип'ять. Це річка Турія, річка Стир далі.
On the other hand, it is the most well-preserved landscape territory with the largest variety of species of animals and plants in Volyn.
І найбільша різноманітність, яка зустрічається в Волинській області, крім Шацького національного парку, якраз сконцентрована на території нашого парку.
This unique territory was placed under protection in the 1980s, when reserves along the Prypyat and Stokhid rivers were established, and in 1995 the Prypyat-Stokhid Regional Landscape Park united a considerable part of these reserved areas. For the last 11 years, these unique wetlands have been protected by the National Natural Park, which covers 40,000 hectares. People favored these places some thousand years ago. At that time, there was a trade route here. Over the years, numerous sleeves and straits of the Stokhid River became shallow. Traveling along the Stokhid River, it was possible to get lost in its labyrinths, but at the time that was the only possible way to get to neighboring villages, to send children to school, and to travel by boat to the Libya market. 80-year-old Katerina, who has lived here all her life, remembers the period when the river was navigable and steamboats made their way to the neighboring Republic of Belarus. The steamer cruised down the river. Men caught fish and sold them to traders. There was one trader who brought fish to the town of Pinsk. There were 2 steamboats a day carrying fish and wooden barges. 10 men traveled on the barge and floated logs all the way to Pinsk. Today the river has become shallow and kayaks with motorboats replace trading barges. On some days, one can see the sandy bottom of the river with the naked eye. 20-year land reclamation led to the dying of the local wetlands, after which the river became shallower. The fact is that the groundwater became 1.5 meters deeper. Why did this happen? This territory was swampy, and swamps tend to retain water, which naturally maintained the level of water in the river. These wetlands generously feed surrounding meadows, forests, and lakes, but sometimes they even cover them up. Their banks overgrown with reed mace, and sphagnum moss gradually form a thick crust on the water surface. This is how mesotrophic swamps appear. There are only such swamps in the drying lake Rohozne in the Prypyat floodplain. Senior citizens remember this lake surface when it was clean. Its area of 103 hectares was completely clean without thickets. And after reclamation began and pumps started working, many organics appeared and sap propel began to accumulate. This is what scientists call century-old sediments from dead aquatic vegetation, residues of living organisms and plankton. Sapropel accumulated on the lake's edges, and there was intense vegetation and overgrowth of the reservoir surface.
Ми зараз йдемо на мезотрофне болото, яке знаходиться в заплаві озера Рогізне.
We're now going to the mesotrophic swamp in the Rohozne Lake floodplain. I hope to see the red book species of the Sheikhsteria plant and Arctic birch.
Михаїл, який нам покаже, де вона знаходиться, що там робиться.
Mikhailo remembers this swamp since childhood and leads the way.
Дане болото. Він ще пам'ятає його з дитячих років.
A botanist's trained eye recognizes the unique signs of a mesotrophic marsh. It is characterized by sphagnum moss flooring. In translation, a sponge can absorb large amounts of water and hold it for a long time. Swamps are a severe environment for plants. Only bushy trees can survive in the oxygen-depleted soil. On the contrary, Arctic birch is a typical tree that grows and can survive in a mesotrophic marsh. Immediately, we come across a rare plant from the orchid family, Epipactis palustris, or northern orchid. And next to it, there is a Lapland willow. This was the first time it was spotted here. The early marsh orchid from the orchid family has already blossomed. A journey through a swamp is not safe. Its soft and dense emerald flooring is quite cunning. Looking like a durable vegetable covering, one can easily fall through by stepping on a thin section of this deceitful layer. Wandering through the swamps, we feel they're moving. To avoid falling through, we test the strength of the flooring. There's low level of water and dirt, but as soon as water rises, everything will be covered with moisture. There are few people who are ready to walk through swamps. Although living in swamps deprived locals of fear, standing on a knee in swamps, locals harvested hay, picked berries, and wild rosemary. Walking knee-deep through swamps, we had to carry hay on frozen feet. We could hardly make steps because our rubber boots bogged down. We continued to carry hay. We harvested hay in the swamps and gathered berries there. We had to cross some swamps. It was a long trek, so we had to stay overnight in a neighboring village. At sunrise, we went to gather bogberries and cranberries. It was in late autumn. The swamp water was clear, so it was potable. Now this reserve is almost empty, but autumn rains can fill it with water surrounded by swamps, forests and floating clouds that reflect mirror surfaces. There are 5 lake mirrors in the national park, and each one is different in size and origin. The largest and most enchanting is Lake Libya, on more than 500 hectares. The Prypyat fills this lake with water and crosses it. We came to the Prypyat from Lake Libya, which is a typical floodplain crossed by the Prypyat River. It was likely formed in the lowlands as a result of geological changes.
Через нього протікає річка Прип'ять. Не виключено, що воно в геологічних процесах сформувалося за рахунок оцих таких понижених місць.
The local lakes were filled in the Ice Age, and obviously the movement of glaciers intersected the Prypyat.
Періодів. І в цей момент відбувалися якісь промивні процеси, які сприяли тому, що через озеро пройшла річка Прип'ять.
There are several versions of the origin of the name Prypyat. According to one, it got its name when water was at its lowest level. This happens in late summer or early autumn.
Це, звичайно, не у всіх місцях, а в деяких.
Such shallow is on sandbars and turns, but at the same time, the depths of the river can reach 5 to 7 meters.
Час є і глибини сягають там і 6, може, і 5, і навіть, може, і 7 метрів. Співає, да. Кудись полетить, куди він? Ага, ще ближче підсів, да? Бачите, да? Да, вона сіла низько. Може все-таки веслом чуть-чуть, Микола, давай я. Ну. Зараз. Тільки так потихеньку. Так, прямо.
Another bird appeared. It was of another species. I think it was a sedge warbler, about 10 meters away from us.
Ще одна підлетіла, але то вже другий вид. Ще очеретянка лучна підлетіла.
Among the thicket of reed, jumping from leaf to leaf, the restless bird continued its trills. This warbler is a small bird, only 15 to 16 centimeters long, weighing 20 to 25 grams. This small-sized bird looks like a sparrow. Having a modest plumage, it sings well. Males can sing all night, especially during the mating season. Among warblers, the aquatic warbler is the most valuable for the national park. A fifth of the total number of these birds nest in the open spaces of the Prypyat-Stokhid National Park. Therefore, preservation of these redbook birds is considered a special duty here. Living a nomadic life, an aquatic warbler goes on long and difficult flights in late summer. Although it prefers to nest in these lands, it spends most of the year in warm countries. An aquatic warbler spends the winter in West Africa. It's quite lively in the thickets of reed, in which the colony of marsh birds build nests, feeds, and breeds their offspring. Black and white-winged terns are frequent guests here. Some of them nest here, while others stop feeding during migration. In recent years, their number has significantly decreased as they have nowhere to nest. The fourth summer is dry, and there is lack of free vegetation islands on the water surface. It's the last stage of feeding chicks. Almost all of the birds are flying, and only lazy ones rely on more feed from their feeders. The young chicks squeal for food, and the elders feed them, although the young chicks are completely independent and can easily fly from leaf to leaf to find some food. In the cacophony of the birds' trills, the cackling of gray geese can easily be heard. Every spring, a flock of about 1.5 dozen pairs flies here to breed. But there was not always such serenity. In 1969, the birds of these wetlands gave way to humans. Geese nested here up to 1969, and then they disappeared.
А потім після 69-го року практично нагніздування не було. І пізніше десь в 93-му році.
And only in 1993 the first broods were found, and to this day there are only 10 to 15 pairs.
Пара, може навіть і 15 пар гніздиться на території парку.
Geese and other birds still prefer sheltered reeds or open water surfaces, but there are cases when humans can approach them to observe how they live in their habitat.
Так само ми підійшли по воді на 25 метрів.
We walked 25 meters closer, and a goose did not react and continued feeding.
Про довіру птахів.
This indicates their trust in humans and that they're not bothered here. It's a security indicator in the national park.
Охорони в національному парку.
Birds feel protected, so they have no reason to worry. Birds are not hunted, and the silence of nature prevails here. The Prypyat-Stokhid floodplains are wetlands of international significance and are protected by the Ramsar Convention. These lands obey only the natural rhythm of nature to this day, just as tens of thousands of years ago, when this unique landscape was created. As long as nature is highly appreciated here, birds will sing and fish will swim in the rivers and lakes of these Volyn wetlands. This unique natural environment will remain a treasure of rare species of flora and fauna.